slope for the next 2 days. Slope, we look at the steepness of a line. We define it as the change in the y's over the changes in the x's. We also refer to it as rise over run. Rise is the up and down movement. Run is the left and right movement. Other words for slope: rate of change, common difference. Those all mean the same thing. There's 4 types of slope. Positive slope is a slope that increases from left to right. Negative slope is a slope that decreases from left to right. Zero slope think like Grand Forks area, North Dakota, it's flat, zero slope, no hills. And then we have something called undefined slope, and that's going to be a vertical line. We have a symbol that we can also use to write, also use to represent undefined slope. So 0 with a slash through it. This is another way of looking at the slope. We've got our positive, our negative, our 0, and our undefined. To find a slope from a graph, it's really just all about counting. So our first thing we do, look at the graph and get a clue. So is it positive? Is it negative? Is it 0? Is it undefined? Looking at this graph, it's positive, yeah. So it's going up. So I know whatever my answer is going to be a positive number. Next step is to get 2 points in your sight. So think like hunting. So you have your crosshairs here, and you want to line up the crosshairs so that it's right on the grid line. So a point like that would work. A point like this is kind of a crummy one because we don't really know exactly where it's at. So find points that are in your crosshairs. This would be a little better. Once you have those 2 points, you simply tell me the directions. How do I get from point A to point B in terms of rise and run? So I go up 2, rise 2, run 3. I write my slope as a fraction, 2 over 3. I remind myself this was supposed to be positive. This is a positive number, so I'm good. We're going to leave our slope as fractions today. We're going to leave them as improper fractions. So we can see the rise, we can see the run. All right, let's try another one. Again, first step, just getting a clue. This line has a slope that's negative. It's falling down. So in the end, my answer should be negative. So I pick 2 points, nice points. Maybe that one. Maybe that one. And then we determine how do we get from one to the other in terms of rise and run. So to get from here to here, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and run 3. And I went backwards 3, so I'm going to put a negative there. Some people might see this differently. Some people might see that we go down 6 and then forward 3. That's fine too. No matter which way we do it. So if we did rise over run like that, or like that, they both simplify to be the same thing. The negative can float, middle, top, bottom, doesn't matter. So we'll just put it in the middle. And then 6 over 3 can reduce to 2. We could do 2, or we could do 2 over 1. Either one is fine. Now, same graph. Had we used different points, maybe like this one and this one, the closer they are together, those nice points, the less reducing we have to do. Now to get from one to the other, we go up 2, back 1. my slope would be 2 over -1 or -2 over 1. If you put the negative in the middle, or -2, I'm okay with any of these options. Okay, so that's finding a slope from a graph. Count the rise over the run. If you're not given a graph, you're just given points. We could graph them, but we don't carry graph paper around in our pocket. And if we did, this is still a really nasty point to graph because we have to have a really large piece of graph paper and we have to count up to 29. And so there is an easier way than just grabbing a piece of graph paper. I'm actually going to show you 2 different ways, and I want you to know both of them. So our first option is using a table. So to use a table, to make a table, we take these points and just write them vertically in a table. So we have 329, 534. I'm just separating the x's and the y's. Notice the point still looks like a point. My next step is to find the change in the y's. Ask myself, how do I get from 29 to 34?
Plus 5.
Plus 5. And then how do I get from 3 to 5? Plus 2. Right. And then my slope, and this is corny, but it's rise over run, and I know this isn't how you spell rise, but it's the y's, the rise over the run. So we put the y part over top of the x part. So your slope is 5 over 2. We can't reduce that, so that's my answer. Okay. We're going to leave it like that. We're not going to do like 2.5. Leave it as an improper fraction. Okay. So this is an option. The table can be really handy. It's not what I learned when I grew up. We had a formula, and I'm going to show you that formula because there are times when that will come in handy as well. So here's your formula for slope. And these are like the opposite of exponents. So they're like smaller, a little 2 and a 1, and it's just like a last name. It just tells the difference between the y's. So this is the second y and the first y. This is the second x and the second x and the first x. Okay. This formula uses these points here. So I'll call this one my second y, because it's the second one in the list. I'll call this one my first or second x. This is then my x1, y1. Right? First point, second point. It gets faster as you practice a little more with this. So y2, I take y minus y. So 34 minus 29 over x minus x. And then notice that this point, 5 and 34, those are both my first values. I started with them both times, which is important. Clean up the top. 34 minus 29 is 5. 5 minus 3 is 2. We get the same thing, 5 over 2. It's just a different way of getting to that answer. You might prefer one way over the other. That's okay. Today I'm going to ask you to use both of them, practice with both of them. There are times when you'll prefer one over the other, and that's okay. Let's try a couple examples. We'll try one with the table, and we'll try one with the formula. Okay. So first step in the table is set up our x's and y's. So really just stacking these points up. Next step, we find the change in the y's, and you just ask yourself, how do I get from 4 to 0? And we minus 4. How do I get from 10 to 14?
Plus 4.
Plus 4. Now, the part where people mix up is they don't put the y's over the x's. Y's over run, y's over run, y's over x's. So y over x, we'll reduce that. Gives me like -1. You could write -1 over 1 too, that would be fine. Right. Let's look at the formula for our last example. Formula, remember, is y2 minus y1. Don't worry so much about which one's your y2, which one's your y1. Oh, it's an x. Instead, just think of it as we take a y minus a y. And then we take an x minus an x. Reduce, simplify the top, simplify the bottom. So on the top, a minus, a negative, those are really adding. -2 plus 7 is 5. 12 minus 12 is 0. Try that in your calculator.
It says error.
A special kind of error. It says, not syntax. This time it says divide by 0 error. Like it knows, hey, you cannot divide by 0. That's not allowed. If you ever get a 0 on the bottom,
It means the answer's 0.
means the answer is undefined. Not 0. It is not possible. This doesn't have a slope. So what do we know about this line? What does it look like if it doesn't have a slope?
Just go straight up.
This way. Yeah. So 0 slope is going to be horizontal. North Dakota has 0 slope to it. Undefined slope is like a wall. Right? It's not possible to talk about the slope of this. There isn't any. Okay? So finish up with the worksheet. Rewatch the video again if you need.